this season so far has been the toughest in a lot of ways, but also the most rewarding. We don't ever point fingers at each other, and we don't moan. I make it a non-acceptable behaviour. It is hard sometimes because rugby doesn't give you what you deserve. That's not how it works. Alignment's really important, and buy-in's hugely important, because you get one rotten banana, it ruins the bunch. I share a lot with players that a lot of people think I probably shouldn't share. So I remind myself on that, and that I'm doing my best. I'm human. Being a great dad is way more important than this in 10 years' time.
Welcome to Coaching Culture, the podcast about cultivating culture and leadership. I'm Ben Herring. I've been loving this side of the game for bloody ages. Today's guest is Craig Newby. Craig played his rugby in New Zealand for the Highlanders and the Blues, and had the rare distinction of representing the All Blacks in both 15s and 7s. He then went on to play 84 games for the Leicester Tigers in UK and began his coaching career in the UK 14 years ago. Since then, he has coached a huge variety of teams from Japan to Ulster in Ireland. Today, he is head coach of the Cambridge Rugby Club and joins us today mid-season, where results are not where you want them as a coach. 15 games, 14 losses and 1 draw. Now, not many people, let alone coaches, are as open and transparent as Craig around sharing their insights and lessons he's taken in real time around losing for the benefit of coaches everywhere. Craig Newby, welcome to the Coaching Culture podcast.
Thanks, 𝐿𝐴𝐺. It's a 14 years journey. It's funny how you hear back some of your past life and you almost forget about how, like, your playing career, but and you're so fixated on your coaching stuff now and so passionate about that space. It's been 14 years and it's been a journey, and this season so far has been the toughest in a lot of ways, but also the most rewarding in so many ways, which sounds strange. People will be listening going, how do you get reward out of losing? But hopefully we get into that as well.
Yeah. Well, isn't it funny that we just reflect on 14 years as a coach, and it still feels like you're learning after 14 years, right? There's still stuff you're picking up along the way, right? You're just like, wow, what is this?
I think it's the evolution of yourself, isn't it? And that's, doesn't matter if it's in sport or just in life, you're always moving forward, and coaching is the same. The game moves on really quickly, trends and different things. My passion's defence, and the attacks move on, and physicality moves on, and just everything moves. So if you don't move, you get left behind.
Yeah, mate, absolutely. And so you're joining us today, mate. How a lot of coaches would really struggle to come midway through a season after 14 losses on the bounce, which is very unusual for you and your teams. What makes you so comfortable, mate, to give back this sort of learning? I think we were talking off air about, just you don't hear from you often hear the success stories in coaching about those that win World Cups and things. You don't always hear, the opposite side. So is that part of the motivation for freeing up the chat today?
Yeah, I think so. I read a lot of books and listen to podcasts, and people in the world that are role models. Is often around success and how they won the World Cup, or what they do in a successful season, and we're obviously going through something. So this is probably as much as just talking about what I've been trying to do, and maybe hopefully you can challenge me and ask some questions that I might not have thought of. And but at the same time, I'm pretty open with it, because it's been tough and at times, but your podcast is predominantly around coaching, culture, and that's something I'm pretty passionate about, and the environments and the teams I've played for or coached with, the ones that are enjoying themselves and working hard are the best ones, and this is winning is a weird way of making you feel good about what you're doing, but we're actually trying to use other metrics and other parameters to define success. And it's severely challenging our environment and our values and our people and our connection to each other. So, it's pretty easy to, when you're winning, you just paper over some things, but we are looking under every rug for answers, without throwing away the process and the good things we're doing. You know, we can't just change everything every week, but we're looking for small things and small areas of growth.
Oh, mate, there's so much gold nuggets in here, which I want to get to through the show. Things like using other metrics to define success and looking under every rug for the smallest thing that could be the case. But before we get to those, I think we'll just open up with how we do on the show is how do you define culture, firstly?
Oh, it's who we are. So it's what someone, if they came in and looked, what does that team look like? And that's on and off the field, you know, who we are. And that can come from a question of who we want to be, or where we're from. Like we're from Cambridge, and you might be from Japan, or you might be from somewhere. So culture to me is who we are. It's who your group is, and then who we want to be. So that's kind of how I wanted to narrow it down.
And how do you does the definition change when you're in the middle of a losing streak?
No, I don't think so. I think you set out what you want to be and how you want to get to that. And we've, you know, we did a 3-day camp, army camp down and camped at a rugby club, and the boys, you know, spent some really good time together and came up with a few things around not negotiables and standards. That doesn't matter if you win on Saturday or not. Those things are, you know, they're part of what you try and do. And I don't think we've changed a lot of that. We actually probably lean on it more than anything. You know, when things go tough, it's not throw it all out, because that's the stuff that you're going to remember, and that's who you're going to remember. How you responded to things at the end of the day. So yeah, we don't change a lot.
What sort of stuff are those standards, Craig? Like you talked about standards that are non-negotiable. What sort of examples do we have? Have you chucked in around when you went on that camp, that sort of 3-day camp? What sort of stuff did you put into there?
We kind of come up with because we're sort of theming this year around building a campaign around war, respectful to all the people who are in the military around the world. We've got 3 or 4 military guys in our group that are kind of my advisors and making sure that we're respectful with everything we do. But we looked at building a campaign and and what things go into a campaign, and we narrowed it down to some real big rocks of fit, tight, and fight. And then our values sort of come off those things. So, excuse me. So our fitness was about mental strength around our body fitness. You know, we've got to run and you got to be strong to play rugby. And we've also medically, we can't be injured. So we looked at fit as one of our big metrics. And then that means you got to go and work. You got to do the work before work. Our guys all have jobs, so they got to get to the gym before their job and then come to rugby in the evening. And so some of those things were, encompassed into, we didn't have rules around fit. It was just, this is what you need to do. And the guys wanted to sort of, commit to those things. Tight for us, again, this is not, there's no rules in any of this stuff, but we wanted to, off the field, be really close and enjoy our rugby, whether that's sharing a beer, whether it's sharing a birthday. We've had a couple of guys have had children this year, so we've celebrated those. We've had a guy, he's pretty close to getting his 200th game for the club, so we'll really celebrate that one. So that's the tight. And then that also around our detail on what we're trying to achieve on the field. So being real clear, we sort of talk about clarity equals confidence and confidence equals intensity. So that tight one is around our, like, what we're trying to do, making sure that we know what we're doing. And all these things come with standards, Jama. If like we spend time working out an attack strategy and guys don't go and watch the film or don't connect to it or don't do their homework or don't apply themselves at training, then it falls apart. So I guess from our environment, it's standards, not rules, and expectations, not rules. And then fight, that's sort of a not negotiable around effort and care for what we're trying to do. So there's a bit of a long-winded one around what it looks like.
Oh, fit, fight, tight. It's nice. And I really like that sort of phrase, clarity equals confidence equals intensity. And you build them up. It's nice. Which ones are these, and you've gone through a pretty tough first half of the season, 14 losses on the bounce. Any of these ones been tested? Any ones you've had to sort of, pull up the anchor on and say we need to relook at these ones? Was the fitness up to scratch? Was the tightness where you wanted it to be?
I think, mate, there's been times where, like Mondays, that's when we really see from Saturday to Monday. So we kind of talk about a no rugby Sunday. So I try and encourage no rugby from people on a Sunday, and just go and spend your time with your family and your friends and recover and stuff. And then Monday we sort of get back into it. We've been tested in all of these, like our detail, from our defence systems to our line out winning ability to our attack. All those things have been tested a lot all the time in terms of how good they are or how good we can execute them. That's every week really. But what we try and do is make sure we set performance goals around a rugby, so that we can control how good we get in a scrum, or how good we get in our set piece, or our kick chase. We can control that. So we set really, really careful and deliberate performance goals, so that we guys are still achieving as we go along. Even in losses, we're achieving. And if something flags up that we aren't achieving in, then we can address it. So that's probably, there's a metric on a few things. We've been challenged. Our fitness has been one of the things we've been really proud of. We upskilled the club with GPS and a new gym that they didn't have. So we want guys to be stronger and fitter. Well, what does that look like? So we can now measure that, and we can be deliberate with our training sessions, and we can be smarter and use a balance, between, it's an art, rugby's an art, but there's also a science there. So we now got some measures, and we can say, well, we are fitter than we've ever been. And, we can draw confidence from being fit, and we can, we can fight because we're fit. If you're not fit, you can't do anything, can you? So,
yeah.
Mate, we've been challenged so many times. Injuries, depth, which challenges all of these things. We didn't have our starting tight head for 2 games, and the ability to fight in a scrum goes when your best props out. This is crazy, mate. We get challenged all the time, and we have to be creative and find ways to be better. And the problem we're having is, you fix one thing and then something else comes up. You plug one gap, or you cement over one gap, or you bloody make that awesome, and then something else comes up that's as important, but you didn't know it was important until you're not very good at it.
Do you feel like you are plugging holes in a lot of ways? Like it's a sort of, is it a sinking ship, and you just feel like you're just plugging holes to get through the season? Is that what it feels like?
No, not at all. We sat down and said, what's important in a game of rugby? So over a few beers with some of the leaders in the off season and things, we sort of got together and the coaching staff, and what are the most important things in rugby? So we came up with some real clear, what we think are the most important things, and we focused most of our week on those. We've got 3 things. We spend most of our time on those three things, and then there'll be a little bit extra, a little bit of gold dust that we might have to touch up on, that we do. But so we have a pretty clear plan each week, and it doesn't change, because otherwise you probably never get growth in anything if we just keep changing what we're going after. So that's been probably quite good for me as the head coach. Is I'm not like constantly scratching around going, what are we going to get better at now? Or, oh, geez. It's like, well, actually, no, that thing is a one-off. Yep, we're going to touch on it, or we might address it a wee bit, but we're going to keep going at our big things.
What are some of those big things, Craig? Because I think it's awesome that you sat down like really consciously at the start of the season with your leaders and your senior players and important club people, and you actually put down what was the most important thing at the start of the year, and you keep coming back to those important things. What are some examples of those important things for you specifically?
Well, we're kind of in a 2 or 3 year plan, Jamie, and year 1 was what can we control, and we had to change a lot of things around, like players came in and went, staff changed, but rugby's consistent. It's evolving, but it's rugby's rugby. So we set down that set piece is really important for us.
Yep.
They're both sides of the ball. So that's a massive focus for us. You look at how many tries are scored from set piece and how many tries are conceded from set piece. It's massive. So that was a big not negotiable. So our scrum line out, our attack off set piece, and our defence off set piece. The second one we looked at was transition, so kicking game and turnovers. Again, both sides of the ball, kept it relatively simple. And then we can start building, you can start building principles off those things and make them really, really simple and achievable. And then the last one was just collisions. It's a collision-based sport, so we wanted to be better at tackling and carrying and catching high balls and those and competing for the ball. So we looked at those as our three things: set piece, transition, and collisions.
And you stick to those as your bedrocks for the team? Like you just say, these will be the foundations of our game we agreed upon at the start, and it's got a 2-3 year plan around that. And so that's what you stick to coaching-wise? You say these are the bedrocks of our trainings, of our weeks, that kind of thing?
Yeah, we do. And then when we plan our weeks, we're in a pretty, the machine starts rolling after a few months, and we're in a good process. Our weeks, well, it's marches on pretty good. We try and adapt and change it a wee bit just to change focus. But no, for the majority, those are our big points. And like I said, there'll be things that come up in a weekend where something, wasn't a huge focus, but it might be, something around our, I don't know, like our scrum attack, where we may have only spent a little bit of time on that because most of the focus has been on the line out or something, and then we might touch on something, or our box kicking, for example, might be, that might be specifically poor, so we might touch on it. But all of that's in around our transition and our principles around our transition.
Yeah. How hard is it to not fall into the trap of fixing everything? Like, and specifically when you said no rugby Sundays, is the temptation to do more, to like flood the team full of clips and make them think rugby? Why do you resist doing that in a season which has been tough, or any season for that matter?
I guess I probably getting to know the players and what they go through outside of our environment. So they're all, like, we've got fathers and we've got guys who are working 40 hours a week. We've got teachers and, stresses, and we've got a real wide range of blokes. So understanding their restrictions as well, and you're actually not going to get much out of someone if they haven't got time to do it. So you might as well try and be creative and find out how you can get when you can get time. And we set pretty. We meet at 6:30, and that's relatively not negotiable. We've got we've got a growing leadership group. We've got a lot of young guys who haven't played a lot of footy, so we're growing a lot of that through conversations. But we maximise when we are with the club, so we expect guys to just turn up on time, and when you turn up, you've done a little bit of homework, whether it's a WhatsApp clip or you've done a little bit of conversation with someone. But we maximise the time we have with them, and I think we probably get the most out of them when they're there, and then they can just go and switch off a wee bit when they're away from us.
All in, or when you're in, that kind of, you're not half in by.
Yeah, I remember Laurie Maines told me a thing once around hats on, hats off. I don't know where it came from. Might have been from a coal mine or something. Put your hat on and you're at work and you do your job, and then when you take your hat off, you can be whoever you want. And so we sort of I live by that a little bit. It's it can't all be work. It's got to be some fun, and you got to be yourself as well. So hats on, hats off.
Well, he's probably a good man to quote a whole lot of things, Laurie Maines, ex-All Black coach. You certainly live by that, don't you, mate? Like that hats on, and it was pretty good for your playing career, right? Like you really embrace that mentality as you go hard when you're in, and then you enjoy all the other stuff when you're off, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I probably interesting. Like if I had better. I don't know, like if you could go back, would I do things different? I probably would. I probably wouldn't have gone so hard when my hat was off. I probably lent on that a bit too much, and at times might have maximised my rugby a little bit more if I hadn't have. But then I wouldn't have had as much fun and all the memories. But I think it's important, like in our environment, when you're not winning, it has to be more. It has to be more than winning. We can't define ourselves, and we can't define ourselves as men and women in our club on success. So it has to be around how much enjoyment we have, or what do we celebrate? What are we trying to achieve outside of winning? And by all means, this isn't supersede winning. Like, winning is why we are together. This is why we're playing. It's just it can't all be about that. Otherwise, you're just going to feel, well, you're never going to feel good about yourself, are you? If it's just about winning.
So how do you define it, Craig? How do you define success specifically for the group you're in at the moment, and specifically for this run of losses you're on? Like, how do you, like, when you're not winning, what is your definition of success for your team at the moment?
Yeah, that's probably something that changes. At the start of the year, it was how many academy lads can we bring through? Like, our academy's young. How many guys can we get through into the senior program, and can they play? We knew we had some guys coming up with some milestones, 100 games, 150 games, 200 games. So we're like, right, when those happen, we're gonna throw the kitchen sink at celebrating those. And we've got some good mixes of cultures. We wanted to make sure that they were welcomed. We've got a couple of Kiwis, Tongan, Fijian, South African. We've got a mixture of cultures, so we wanted to make sure that was a success. We wanted to grow our community outreach, and our supporter base, and that comes from style of games and being competitive. The club had been, like, this is not a brand new thing for the club. Over the last 3 years, they've struggled for results in the championship since they got promoted. So we wanted to try and be more competitive, and if we get more people through the gate, then that's a measure of success. That's, I don't know the exact figures, but that's a work in progress as well for that one. So we probably haven't quite succeeded in bringing more people in, but we have certainly been more competitive. And then, like, along the way is how many guys, like, have we got guys signing contracts in bigger and better clubs? Are we getting guys that are re-signing because they love the environment and they've got a job here and they bought in? How many guys are asking for jobs in the community and through our sponsors? And so there's loads of ways of, like, all these positive interactions with our club, and people, as their lives are shaping, then that's success for us. Like, our captain's been at the club for 149 games. It's 150th this week, and he's an Australian guy from North Queensland, and he's been here for a long time, and he'll probably live here forever. So, like, that's pretty cool for a club to keep a guy come over from Aussie to play, and he's stuck around. So there's some success in all that stuff. Like, even our coaches are aspirational. I'm aspirational. So at some point, like, is what I'm learning this year and what I'm going through going to help me be a better coach and get into bigger and better things in my career? Then and same for my, Will, my forwards coach, or Smithy, my backs coach and attack coach. Like, are we gonna produce better players, better coaches, and that's something to be proud of at some point. Ultimately, winning, that's going to define some amount of success, 𝐿𝐿, and we're failing in that if you look at that as a parameter. But if we just look at that, then we get pretty sad. If you're going to feel pretty sad.
I think it's important, Newbs, to always remember that, like, there's always two definitions of success for coaches. There's always the public definition of success, which is what you're talking about, the winning. And all coaches know that. That's what everyone sees publicly. But privately, you got to hold yourself to some different measures, right? Like what you're talking about there, the amount of academy players you bring through, the amount of pathway opportunities for players to sign higher levels, and the amount of community outreach. These are sort of some private things which can actually keep you a bit more steady as a coach, right? So if you would be sinking to a pretty low place if your sole outcome of success was winning, because 14 losses on the trot, like, if you define yourself based on that, it would be a hard personal thing to go through, right? But to have these other private sort of definitions of success or semi-private, I think is really important, mate, just to keep your soul so strong going through such seasons as you're having. But one of the things, mate, I think is important to ask, you said you've learned a lot as a coach and you're an aspiring coach still after 14 years, you're still pushing. What are you learning? What are you learning from a season of, which hasn't gone to plan? What sort of stuff is popping out for you that you're taking away, which all coaches can take away from the situation you're in?
I think I've learned that, like, having those things that we set out that are goals for us, particularly around our rugby, but also around our cultural goals, around our fitness and our togetherness and how hard we're going to fight for each other. Like, having those things set out have really helped. It shapes your week. It shapes your Monday meeting, like how we're going to address after another loss. So finding like clips of someone chasing someone down where you're down by 30 points in the last play and we make a try-saving tackle, like those things, like having that kind of thing really just, like that's so powerful for a coach to keep you on the right track, and it gives you stuff to review and to grow. That's a big one. I find like a coach or coaches or a captain or someone who, a personality in a team, they're the barometer for the energy in the room. And like we meet on a Monday with I call it the game drivers. We've got young guys and old guys, and we talk about anything from the game. It might be a momentum shift, or it might be, hey, how was the social and what can we do this week? What social have we got this week to connect in, or whatever. And then we talk about like our body language and our verbal language and what we're going to talk about to the team and how we're going to speak in the changing room. And if anyone's sort of moaning or doubting themselves or a little bit negative, like how are we going to, because we're the barometer for it. And if we're negative or we're frustrated or angry or happy or whatever, then that's going to transfer across to the players. So I think being quite deliberate with that is really, I've learned, like, that's such a powerful such a powerful weapon to have, like to walk into a room on a Monday after a loss and be really positive or really deliberate with language, like, hey, this wasn't good enough, this is what it looks like, but we're going to get better and this is how we're going to do it. So I probably relied on that a lot around being deliberate with and that's probably a 48-hour process, Jam. It comes from, like, I think having that Sunday off, like particularly for me, I've got a young family and I want to spend time with them, and I'm lucky that we don't train again till Monday night, so I can spend from Monday 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock watching the game back, prepping, like working out. And I've got rid of that, like, real like I get frustrated or disappointed or hopeful. We were so close. We lost Bedford by a point, and it was like, oh my God, how good was that? It was awesome. I was pumped. Boys having, enjoying themselves after the game, and then I get 48 hours to sort of come back down to zero. So I think I've learned that I can beat myself up. I can be disappointed. I can have tough conversations. I can have a beer or enjoy myself, or I can get away. And that's really healthy. I think that's been really healthy for me. And that's probably something, you can take yourself out of it, or you can be in it in a storm and then just take yourself out of that. And by the time you get to Monday, got a pretty clear plan, you're back to zero. And so I've used that a lot. I'm pretty an emotional, like, coach. I draw upon stories and I draw upon people's experiences and I, like, I don't F and Jeff, but I like to speak and I like to be nice and clear, and that can be tiring, but if I've got that time to decompress, then that seems to work.
Have you gone too far emotionally? Like, emotional coach, have you have you had a few blowouts? Like with this many losses in a row and the pressures and stuff that come with it, have you blown out and said stuff you regret this season?
I've had one, not blowout. That's old school, and I've had one, and it was at halftime in one game, and it was around effort. It was nothing to do with execution. It was effort creating poor execution, poor decision making through effort. We talk about effort creates opportunities. That's a big rock for us around things. If we're not willing to run fast, then we're not going to get the opportunities and we're not going to execute. So that was one I've had, and I don't regret it. I was pretty deliberate before halftime. I knew I could just feel in the warm up. I could feel in the start of the game. I could feel through the first half. We started wrestling it back, and I think it was 13-5 to them at halftime. And I kind of wrote, "Look, this is what I want to do. This is what I want." So I wrote a couple of things down in my notebook and just said, "I'm going to stick to these, and I'm not going to wing it as much, but I'm going to be quite deliberate. That I think these guys need some. I think they need to feel some heart and some hunger and some fight from me." Players might say otherwise. They might think, because I'm quite direct, I'm pretty honest. Like, I call a spade, so they might sometimes think me being really positive at times is actually, geez, he's pissed off. But once, crazy, once. That's it.
Once,
and I don't regret it. And I thought it was good, and we responded. We didn't get the win, but we responded. Yeah, it was cool.
Would you have been tempted to do more of it if the response was good? Do you think in the season maybe doing it more than once might have been worthwhile?
I think like that was a raised voice, like a yelly kind of thing.
Throwing chairs type.
No, not quite chairs, but I was like, I don't think so. But what I have been deliberate with is I think that you can deliver that intensity or that emotional message in other calmer ways. I always remember when you coached at Leicester and I was there, and you told a story about, I don't know, what was it? Heineken Mayer might have told a story about two frogs in a bucket of milk, and like one frog just gives up and dies, and the other one just keeps fighting, and then eventually turns it into cream and then butter, and then he jumps out. So those little stories that like can be like that can be as powerful in a humorous way, but a connection to something way as yelling. So I've been pretty deliberate. We had it was around the Remembrance Day. We got I got some Air Force guys in who'd been at Gallipoli, and they come and spoke to the boys before the game. Like I didn't even speak to them in the huddle before in the change room. They spoke around a couple of things. I sort of briefed them on what we're trying to be and what we're trying to do, and they spoke for 5 minutes, and that was better than anything I could ever do. And the players went in, went good. It was against Nottingham, and we nearly beat them. So could I have done more of them? Maybe, but it's a long season, and if you get it wrong early or you get it wrong ever, like that can be hard to drag back, I reckon.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is, but I've been in teams where the coach does yell a lot, and sometimes you need it, and you're like, yeah, we deserve that. And sometimes it's like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Mate.
It's almost like the same as parenting, right? If as a father, for us to, if you're constantly using that yelly voice or that demanding voice, it just turns into white noise after a while, and the kids don't really listen. They don't really pay attention when dad's just using his voice again. But I would say, as a suggestion to that though, like, because you would want your voice to be, when you say it, like you say it occasionally or now and then, it actually lands really strongly, right? Like when you yell at your kid to stop because at the side of a road and you don't do it normally, they go, whoa, dad's talking in that voice. I got to listen to this. But I would say, mate, there's something about the variety in your approach, isn't there? Like as a coach, you need to try hit all the different personality types in the room. So sometimes that angry voice works for a couple of people in the room, particularly. And it might not work for everyone, but then the other times the softer voice works for the other chunk of the room. And then sometimes the sort of balanced version works for the other chunk of the room. So part of the art of coaching is to be able to hit as many people you can with the way you deliver stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something I've learned as well, is not all about me. Particularly when things aren't going well, you kind of burden that responsibility of the group. But I've probably learned that it's not just me, like burden. It's the captain, it's the line-out caller, it's our forwards coach, it's the team manager. Like everyone's got a little bit. So it might be a question to a player just before we go in to talk at halftime. It might be, hey, what are you thinking? And he'll say, I want to get into them, or I reckon we really need to double down on our attack in the second half, or or something. So sometimes I've probably learned that a lot. I find that not natural to let others, like I feel really responsible. So I've, so that's something that I probably have to admit that, like at times it's easier just to keep doing and not sharing.
Go almost insular, just bunker down inside yourself, right? But that's a cool phrase, man. Not just me that's burdened. It comes back to a famous quote is like that: a problem shared is a problem halved. And I think that's a really cool one for coaches that are under the pump with results. That public definition of success is to not go insular and in your bubble and in your silo, but to actually understand that other people are hurting too, right? And it's not just your hurt; it's a bit of everyone. How do you, apart from just chatting to the leaders and other people, how do you share some of that burden, or just acknowledge that everyone's going through something?
I guess my process of the week. So what does our week look like? So we tend to, on a Monday, it'll be a review, and we might touch on something that might be appropriate to the week coming, but it's tend to be our process of review. On a Tuesday, we look at our attack stuff, and then on Thursday we look at our defence. So I guess our process, the coaches have their moment that where they're leading, and they know that it's their point or their area. We have the same thing with our groups of coaches. Like we meet on a Zoom at 1 o'clock on a 12 o'clock on a Monday, and just connect on what we've seen and what we need and what we think. And it might be, hey, this week I think you need to speak to the forwards more, or let's get the backs in together and whatever. So we make a bit of a plan and try and share that out a wee bit. And then, like I said, I've got a young or a growing group of young leaders, and we meet at 5:30 on a Monday, and we sit down and go through. It could be some clips, or it might just be talking or conversations, or it might have been a task to try and grow. And then I assign, or they assign, who's going to go and try and lead that area throughout we call it locker room talk. So outside of and on-site, outside of rugby and on the field. And so I'm not having to, if I'm the defence coach, I'm not having to stop it all the time and say, hey, our spacing's not good enough, because I know that there's 3 or 4 guys in there that have had that messaging from us. We're aligned, and then they're leading it. And then if I'm not hearing their voices, I can just say after training, hey, I didn't hear you much today on that spacing stuff. Why not? And he'd be like, oh, it was awesome. I was like, okay, cool, find me a clip, and then share it all. So we try and align on a lot of things, and by keeping what we're doing simple, it's easy. Like we got those simple 3 things around our set piece transition. So we like, okay, how did they go this week? Right, it's your role to sort that line out. How are you going to do that? So we try and get alignment through our process, I guess.
How do you keep some of those leaders aligned sort of mentally? Like, it's a tough season for everyone. Like we talked about that burden of everyone. Like, is there any sort of resentment or potential poison that amongst the team? And how do you manage that side of things? Because obviously people are frustrated because everyone wants to win or do well. Is that something which you've had to deal with, and how have you dealt with it?
The poisons one's an interesting one. There's obviously locker room, and I don't see the locker room or the player WhatsApp group or the small groups that go out drinking or whatever on a Saturday night, and you don't hear those conversations. But I'm very deliberate with my language around. We don't ever point fingers at each other, and we don't moan. And I make it a non-acceptable behaviour to be, and it's not acceptable to be that way in a group. I can't control what people have in conversations, but I'm very deliberate with that and using my voice. That's those things. We're not looking for excuses. There's no pointing. There's no moaning. We're looking for solutions. We're looking for answers. We're looking for effort. And so I've been very deliberate with that. And I'm lucky the players that are in leadership areas are good people. We've had a couple of guys come and go that weren't aligned.
Did you have to let them go, or they wanted to go?
A couple of both. I won't go into details. I don't think that's very fair to them. But there's been a couple of each of those, where the alignment just wasn't there. And those were tough calls for the player and tough call for us or me. But at the end of the day, we've all got to be. I think alignment's really important, and buy-in's hugely important, because I don't know, you get one rotten banana, it ruins a bunch, and not everyone's going to be happy all the time. Like, guys aren't playing. Why am I not playing? We're really clear on our feedback, and like everyone does. But as long as everyone's sort of on the same page and bought in, then you can deal with those things as they come along. But if they're not, then I think that's when you got a big problem. The hardest thing for us, I guess, is when you aren't winning, and no matter what you do, I'm assuming at some point, I don't know, we've probably not got there yet, but at some point there's gonna be a tipping point, or a point of no return, or a point of you can return, but it's going to take a heap of effort or something different, or I don't know. So I haven't crossed that bridge yet, but we haven't tipped over yet.
Yeah. Well, here's something, mate, just in regard to your comment earlier when you said, let's have some challenging conversations. When you talk about no finger pointing, like a lot of coaches would say that sometimes pointing fingers leads to better accountability from players. What would your stance or thoughts around that conversation be? Does it, or does it do the opposite?
I think it's a good one. Definitely accountability is huge, and I think it's probably a metaphor for, if you're gonna call someone out, it has to be to them. It has to be in the moment. It has to be relevant, and so it's more, rather than sitting behind at home like stewing about things, or blaming the backs, blaming the forwards, and the forwards blaming the backs. And I think it's probably more of a how we go about coming up with this is a problem. The forwards are the problem, right? How do we get it better? Like, okay, cool. We talk about it, or we practice it, or we address it, whatever it is. So that's probably more of a spin I'd put on it. It's probably how you go about the pointing.
Yep.
Sort of like silent pointing is the worst, like people everyone's like thinking something but not willing to say it. And so I guess got to try and create an environment where the people have a voice, and it's going to be heard, or it's respected, and it's not so that's a good one. I like it around that, because you're right. If I don't know, little Johnny on the wing, he thinks he's doing real good, but everyone knows he can't catch a ball, but no one says anything. He's just going to crack on, isn't he? You're not going to get better.
Well, I think there's a cool sort of concept around it. Like, a lot of coaches talk about that, like you critique in private and then you praise in public. So you show the good stuff and publicly, but then if there's work-ons of things, you go to that person individually and then put it to them like that. But the other one, which a lot of high-performing teams often go to, is that kind of the concept of you critique performance also a little bit privately, like individual technique stuff. That stuff done off the record. But then coming back to some of your points, when effort is lacking, then that's a public thing because that's part of your goals, the fit, fight, type, what you set out at the start. If effort is not there, then that's sort of the stuff that can be critiqued publicly a little bit more because that's one of your team's founding foundations. And so sometimes reinforcing the goods and bads of that can be potentially quite good for a group in theory. But again, it's how you deliver it, and there's ways to point fingers, right?
Yeah. I tend to, on a review on a Monday, we look at our cultural, like our actions, I guess our actions on the field are what we're trying to encourage off the field, and how we train and how we language and how we talk to each other. And so I'll try and find some examples of those, where someone, like I said, chased down someone, or they had a ruck that they shouldn't have, or they ran 70 meters to support someone and got the try, so those things are probably a little bit like above and beyond effort. Effort is the standard, and that's what we expect of, every rugby player is expected to work hard and show effort, and but it's above and beyond stuff, and I try and highlight those, and the odd time we might show, a clip or two where someone's walking, like, hey, just so you know, we're like, we call it camera 4. So the fourth camera is the right panned out, and it's like, hey, boys, not having a go here, but look, we can't be walking, or we can't be, like, someone just made a mistake. We've all got to be chasing back, and look at these 5 of you guys, are whatever, and I think there's a balance between, like, being a real personal attack and actually, no, this is not a personal thing. This is a team that needs to grow in this area. And likewise, showing the 3 or 4, like, positive, and this is the expectation on effort, or expectation on our fight, or our behaviours. Like we had one where one of our lads got late tackled, like quite late and high tackled, and we don't condone any kind of handbags and stuff, but our guy lay on the floor holding his jaw, and everyone, he got penalised, the guy got penalised, and everyone just stood around and sort of watching, And I remember highlighting that and going, hey, well, like, did someone go over to the player and pick him up? Like, we don't have to go and have a scrap or anything, but so some of those things were like, and that was massively powerful. And then from that day on, like, guys, like, we showed one where the forwards would win a scrum penalty and the backs didn't come in. We're like, well, mate, these guys are pushing till their eyes bleed here, and they've just got us a penalty. Get in and give them a few bum taps, and just show an expectation, like expected behaviours, and that's good teammate work, and those things, they're infectious, and we can control that. Like, we can't control the opposition's maul attack because they're too good, or we can't always defend for longer than 10 phases because they just get us or whatever, but we can control a lot of emotional and effort and behavioural things, despite the score. One thing I've tried to, well, it'd be good to hear your opinion, mate, around, like, sort of, the next job type mentality, which everyone has, like, you're under the post, right, next job is, and then they score again and it's next job, but at some point that sort of analogy or that kind of tactic. So I'd like, that'll be something I want to explore maybe in the second half, is like, how do we really dial into our, like, next task focus, and how do we execute that next task? Because we often stack negatives, or we go positive, negative, or we go positive, negative. We sort of momentum, or so that might be something to maybe look at in the second half of how we can really dial into improving the next, or the imminent focus.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just on that. Like, it is like something you can train too, right? That next job mentality. Even if you almost look sometimes, I know, is when you do drills, you can actually train the next job mentality around like stacking drills so that they're next jobbing. So, like, say you're doing a tackle drill, you might stack onto the end of a tackle drill where you get up and you realign, and the next job is to point out the next person you're marking up, and getting almost that sort of that automatic behavior of do one thing, next thing. And so every drill you might do a passing drill, so where it's just 4 hands, and the classic hands, you could add something into that. So everything's got a theme around this next job. You pass, and then you have to sprint around a cone and realign, or take a kick, or clean a ruck, and just that. So just sowing the seed that there's always next job. So you never give players the time to dwell on what just happened, even in a drill. So like you do a pass, and if it's a good pass, you go, oh yeah, that's a good pass. And you've thought about that. And likewise, if it's a bad pass. But if you pass and then you have to go around the cone and clean something out, you haven't dwelled on that one thing. You've moved on really quick to the next job. And almost having that theming, like transferring it from a mental construct to like physically on the field, everything you're doing is next job, next job. And I think just that kind of creates a bit of a theme for a session as well. And if you're going into the back half of the season where that's the theme, then building into your training to reinforce that is pretty cool. Even furthermore, to your point around the huddle under the after you've scored a lot of points, I think it's also important too that you actually have a bit of a focus around cool things you can do in that huddle, rather than it just be, right, we're getting back up there kicking. That's all good. But like I've found little things you can do around, like a real immediate next job might be, we're just going to chase this kick down. Like as a group, Johnny's going to go out first and we're going to go back and we're going to keep running till we get to halfway. That's the next job. And so you tick that box, because sometimes if you say, we're going to get down there, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, that may not pan out. And then you're like, oh, well, we didn't even get what we wanted. But a controllable one is what you say in the huddle. You could do next job, and there is all eyes on captain. This is our focus for the huddle. And he's going to say something, and that's it. And then we're going to chase the kick, and then tick. We've done the next job. And it's like when you make your bed in the morning, you just get it done. So everything else that follows has a good start point. I think the coaches can be really deliberate around some of those huddles. And I think the next job is a cool theme too.
Yeah, we often reflect back and talk about, right, what were we talking about in that moment? They just scored 2 tries in a row. What are we talking about after that second one? Or do we think about changing something? Or what was that? Why did we change it? Or why did we kick long or short or whatever? So we often reflect back. I think that's important to ask in those moments. So I'll write those down during the game and go, 𝐼, this was a good moment for us to reflect back on. And I might send out to the leadership group a clip and just go, hey, we're going to talk about this, or this is the topic, come with some ideas. And so we try and reflect back, I guess, and try and learn, because what I'm trying to do as well, and this is a hard one, because we obviously resources and budgets and all sorts, but we've got a really young group, and we've got some guys who are, the older guy, but in terms of numbers of championship games, is low. And so I'm trying to accelerate learning and experience through reflective and being deliberate with tasks and on field, like training wise, scenarios that they've got to go and implement. And so that then I'm trying to turn like a guy who's played 10 games into someone who's played 50 games just by reviewing or helping, And one thing that we had this week, we spoke, and one of our lads said, because we've got quite a big group of them. There's about 8 of them that come in there. There's the 2 9s, one's 19 and one's mid-20s. We got 2 10s, one's late 20s, one's early 20s. We got the line-out leader. We got a hooker. Got a centre who's the defence leader. Got a 7 who's the other defence leader, for example. So that's the group. And one thing one of the lads in there said, he said, I think we're all thinking too much and not doing enough. All these meetings we're having, like everyone's like working stuff out and trying to learn and stuff, but we're actually talking too much, and everyone's trying to there's not people saying too much, but he thinks everyone's trying to think of like, what should we do next, and instead of doing the next thing. So I kind of like had I'm trying to do like some real good stuff with these guys, but actually might be holding them back from just playing. And I'd often talk about 80-20 rule. 80% of leadership is the player, and 20% is the actual leadership. So we sort of just said, all right, this week it's about 80-20, just be the best, be the best player, and then your leadership will come off the back of it. So that was quite a, what's the word, like an eye-opening moment. It was pretty cool that this lad's like realised it or thought of it, and now we shared it, and we're like, actually, maybe, you know, we're not playing free, we're thinking too much, and when you're thinking, you're slow.
Does that come back to that opening statement you said about you've looked under every rug? Is the potential to be looking too hard sometimes and over-analysing, making players have to be thinking way too much than they ought to be?
Probably, mate. Like, we're probably just trying to not bite off too much, but I'm trying to do the best I can, you know, and trying to give them more and trying to accelerate learning and accelerate performance. No, the flip to that is we keep things pretty simple on the field, and our meetings are relatively simple. There's sort of not more than one or two messages, you know, so we're pretty good at there, I think, but it might just be a little bit of clutter around like the cognitive space and you know, a couple of those guys in that leadership group are quite physical players, you know, so they don't need to be, maybe they're just worried about hitting stuff and
just release the hounds.
Yeah, so that was something we looked at this week, and so that might, you know, we'll reflect again on Monday and go, how did that feel? You know, how did it feel? Just not even thinking too much, and just like, we've got our maps, we know what we're doing in this line out, we know what we're trying to do on our kick chase, we just crack on.
And off air too, just when you talked about sort of flipping to something different, you talked about like flipping the narrative for some of these losses, and about how it's actually doing a wonderful thing for players in life, not just here and now. You took that side of things and you flipped some of the chat to around this hard time you're going through, which is a hard time, is actually doing wonders for you for life. And I just think that was a lovely statement you said. Were you able to sort of reflect on that sentiment?
Yeah, we got, at some point, we talked about, I often talk about use stories or like past events or current stuff, and one of the things we were talking about at one point, I talked about, was in modern society, and not everywhere and not all the time, but modern society has become a little bit, everyone gets a certificate and a lollipop, and you know, like, life's not like that. Like, people are losing jobs or getting sick, or, you know, like, life's not like that. And so we talked about the benefits of going through really tough times, and is inner resilience, is the ability to have confidence in your own, you know, your own life, and that you'll get through any adversity. If you can get through, you know, like currently a long losing streak, then, you know, when you don't get a job, or your girlfriend breaks up with you, or you know, or you get sick or whatever, you might have some internal resilience that has been growing. And so we talk about that, and it gets a bit emotional at times, some of the stuff. You know, we've had people in our team who have lost family members this year, and we talk about, you know, like, talk about that and how lucky we are to play, and you know, we reflect on some of that stuff and use that as you know, reminders that we are lucky to play footy, and even though you're losing, it's still an awesome game. And so, yeah, it can be, like, rugby is such a cool sport for life lessons and learning and friendships and all those things. So, you know, there's been a couple of occasions where I've reminded ourselves of those things, and that could be quite cool. Some guys take it on board, like you said. Some guys might go, oh, it doesn't mean much for me, but, you know, if we get 5 or 6 or 10 or more or whatever of connecting into something, then it's worth it.
And what do you have to remind yourself of, mate? Like, obviously, you go through some pretty serious stresses, and you probably go pretty internal and deep dive on yourself. You look under every rug as a coach. What do you have to keep reminding yourself of as a coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. I often remind myself of two things. One is, I'm doing my best. So, does that mean I can't do better? Of course it doesn't, but I'm doing my best, and so I remind myself on that, and that I'm doing my best. I'm human. I'm trying my best. And the other one is it's probably more like a legacy thing, but it doesn't define me. Like being a great dad is way more important than this. And in 10 years' time, this season will be it'll be something to remember. But so there's loads more things that will define me. So this doesn't, but. It's hard, mate. It's hard sometimes because you're like, geez, I just want to win a few games. And the boys are working so hard. Rugby doesn't give you what you deserve. That's not how it works. But they're earning, they earn it. And they, like emotion, winning is such a beautiful emotion that I want them to have it. Like I feel like they need it. And like it's such a nice thing to have. So that'll be cool at some point for them to, hopefully it happens. If it doesn't, please, geez, we'll write a book.
We'll have to come back and have
2
a chat
pages.
post-season, the 26 game season with
be on Netflix next year.
Mate, isn't it? I think those are absolutely lovely things, and I think it's a really important to put those in perspective. That one, you're doing your best, and two, it doesn't define you. And that's really important for coaches to remember because it's easily forgotten in the swirl of performance, in the swirl of, the pressure to win, to just remember those two things and be a little bit gentle on yourself at times. I think it's a cool thing. Now, mate, it's got to that time. What an enlightening conversation, mate. Not many people can actually be as open as you are in the thick of it. You're in the heart of a streak, which is not a normal one and not a good one. So to be able to share and be so open is unbelievable, mate. And it speaks volumes of yourself, as anyone that knows you knows that is you. So we will finish with one question, man. And it's this: what's one belief you hold about coaching or culture that you suspect that you have that you reckon your peers or contemporaries would disagree with?
And it's such a hard one because I actually find like I've tried to be really authentic. I think I've learned through my 14 years of coaching that being authentic, and I probably did it when I played. I was me, like I just was me, and I enjoyed it, and I probably played my best footy because of it. It's taken me probably 10 years of my coaching to be authentic, and not try and just keep learning and be someone else and copying what Wayne Smith does or bloody Rassie Erasmus or whatever, and learn from those guys because they're amazing. But being authentic is really important, and so I'm sometimes very, very blunt, and I think a lot of people think I'm too honest, and I share a lot with players that a lot of people think I probably shouldn't share. Not necessarily like secrets or anything, but just details of why I've got to something or why we're not good at something. And I'm pretty open, and that I don't think a lot of people think that I should be that open and honest and probably that direct. And I guess it just comes from because I care. I really care about people and getting them better, and probably more care about a team doing things together and then doing them together off the field as much as on the field. So, yeah, that might be something people might disagree sometimes with how direct I can be.
What out of interest, why do you think it took 10 years to be authentically you?
Probably because I've got a goal, like I've got a coaching goal and I've not hit it. And I wanted to do anything I could to be better to get that goal. And so I was like, I haven't hit that goal now, so I need to get better. So I'm going to go and learn, and I'm going to listen, I'm going to speak and question and try and evolve and change and get better or whatever. And I think I probably, in doing that, confused what made me good at whatever I was good at the start. So that probably, and then I had a change of head coach, and the new head coach said to me, "What are you good at?" That was the first thing he said. "What are you good at?" And I said, "Oh, I'm quite good at these things." He goes, "Well, that's what I want you to do. Do that." I was like, oh, "Okay, cool." And then I just really enjoyed it, and I just sort of became myself a bit more. And then for example, like I learned the guitar when I was 30 odd, just so I could play on a bus and like sing songs on a bus. That's what I did. And at this one team, I'd been at the team for 3 years and I hadn't played on a bus for 3 years because didn't feel like it was me. And then, so yeah, that was a moment really, probably 3 or 4 years ago, when that one coach asked me that question, what are you good at? Why you do that? So thanks to him, I'll send him a message.
Just to build on that, Newbs, it's a good question to ask players too, isn't it? What are you good at? Just go do that well. Sometimes in coaching too, right, we're always looking for the thing that's not working. Sometimes to double down on the things that are working really well and get them outstanding is just as good, if not more effective, than critiquing the stuff that isn't. Craig Newby, what an absolute pleasure to have you on the Coaching Culture podcast. If I may, I'd just like to share with you my 3 takeaways that I've got from you from this conversation. Number 1, the standards that are non-negotiable. Your team had these kind of frameworks around fit, fight, and tight, which I thought were awesome, and you kept coming back to them, whatever was happening in the season, and it wasn't always nice. And having something that you've agreed upon before time that everyone's bought into becomes almost like your Bible, and you can just refer to that whatever happens in the season. So having those standards as a non-negotiable, writing them down as a group and sticking to them is a great way to just, be even-keeled in a season regardless what's happening in it. Number 2, the captain or the leader or the coach is the barometer of the team. And I just love that thermo-regulation of the team, and your body language, your verbal language has an effect, like the heliotropic effect, where the sunflowers follow the energy of the sun. So too do players follow the energy of the leaders and coaches in that team. And it's important you're really intentional about what that looks like and how that comes across, particularly when it's all's not going to plan on field. So having an aligned voice is massively important. And number 3 is, I love this phrase that you talked about, is not just me that's burdened, not just the coach that's burdened when you're going through a bit of a streak in performance. And when you understand that it's everybody's burdened at the same time, you're more open to sharing. And we said the quote, a problem shared is a problem halved. And that's a beautiful way as a coach to just actually take all the stress off yourself and actually help those that are also going through stresses. And just to know, just have the intention that it's not just you that's in this. This is a team sport, and the more you can involve everyone, the better you're going to be as a group. Craig Newby, what an absolute pleasure to have you here today in the mid-season on the Coaching Culture podcast.
Mate, it's been nice to share. And I guess, like you say, problem shared is problem halved, and now I've shared it with some more people. So I was actually thought you'd be struggling to find 3 good points. So you've done well as well. So good on you, mate.